Hello and welcome to Fintech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today on the show, I have Daire Burke, head of Canada for Swoop Funding. Swoop is an Irish-based company that works in multiple countries, providing companies with access to a platform that aggregates lending solutions to meet their needs from various commercial lenders. And with that, here's my interview with Daire. Daire, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you having me on.
Excellent. So before we get started, conflict of interest disclosure, I do some work for Enterprise Ireland, and that's how we first met when you asked about coming into this market and was it worth your time. And I got to explain the disaster that is Canada, but you were still bold enough to come into Canada. So I give you credit. We could use the help. So Daire Burke of Swoop, tell us about Swoop.
Sure. Thanks, Jason. So Swoop is an online marketplace for small businesses who are looking to find funding for their business. So really what we're trying to achieve is giving business owners a tool they can use to very quickly find and compare funding products from right across the market. So we provide access to lending products, grants, and also equity financing products as well. So really we try to stay with businesses throughout their whole life cycle, whether they're getting a startup loan, whether they're looking to raise capital through a VC, or whether they're looking for a commercial mortgage. We really try to be a one-stop shop for finance for small businesses.
Excellent. Now, before we get into the history, for most people who listen who are not business owners, they don't understand the frustration of this. I mean, it's like, well, why wouldn't you just go to a bank? It's like getting a mortgage. No, it's not. People fail to understand that the most experience they typically have with lending is a credit card, fine, we're not supposed to put money on that, and a mortgage. And the reality is the mortgage has a house to secure it, your business. People don't look at the risks, or companies don't look at the risk profile the same way. Also, there's many diverse needs for lending that exist within business. So this is a much more complex and convoluted area than most people think, and do not appreciate that. Interest rates are a lot higher in this area than conventional lending for mortgages. And not only that, the covenants and the deals are far more bespoke. So talk to me about how, or before we get into that, talk about the origin. What was the genesis of Swoop? What was the need that you guys were looking to address when you created it?
Yeah, just like you've alluded to, I mean, some of the points you touched on there were really at the core of why Kieran and Andrea, who came together to found Swoop a couple of years ago, designed the platform. So access to capital for small and medium-sized businesses, not just here in Canada, but right across the globe is an enormous challenge. They're not just smaller versions of big businesses. They have immense trouble from traditional banks getting capital. Their balance sheets, their trading history all kind of act against them. That's compounded by the fact that a lot of small business owners don't have the time to spend researching financial products that are out there and available to them. They might not be accountants or finance folks. They're just trying to run their business. They've got all kinds of challenges when it comes to finding finance and finding the right finance as well. So what we often encounter is businesses using the wrong sort of products, or being forced to use a credit card to purchase a piece of equipment or all of these types of scenarios. So really we're trying to design a tech solution to help to address that funding gap and that knowledge gap and that financial literacy gap that exists for a lot of small business owners. I think over time when we're developing the solution, what we realize as well is the role that advisors play in small businesses kind of everyday life. So very often when a big financing decision has to be made, the accountant, the lawyer, the wealth advisor, the broker, that's the individual that the small business owner is often turning to as a first point of contact. That might be on the back of a rejection by the bank as well. That's important to note. So what we noticed in the UK, even as early as 2019, which was kind of early after our launch, the percentage of business owners that actually sought financing after being told no by their bank was really low. So a lot of business owners were choosing to go without debt or choosing to go without funding after being rejected by their bank, which obviously closed them off from the market of all the financial products that are out there and available to them, and really kind of stifled their growth. Very often, these are strong businesses, cash flow positive, EBITDA positive, businesses that have been around for a number of years, but are still falling in the trap of just not being big enough to be dealing with a commercial lending team at a bank or a corporate lending team or however they want to label themselves. So even here in Canada, there's over 1 million companies that are turning over less than $10 million. And those are the businesses that can probably benefit from our platform the most. And I think an important point in the design as well is that this is a free to use service for businesses. So we're not charging, it's not a SaaS model. We don't charge fees for creating an account or checking out what options are available. Really everything is designed with the small business owner in mind. And we've since designed products and solutions for advisors as well. So we have an advisor portal, we have a broker portal. And so we're really trying to address the kind of financing gap from all angles.
It's, chuckling a little bit while you were talking there, because speaking to personal experience so much, the entire a lot of this is predicated by being rejected by the bank initially, makes so much sense because again, the lending issues, what people think lending is changed forever when they open a business and try to get a loan. Absolutely. Yeah. And, speaking from personal experience, again, having a business that is services based, not a lot of assets to pledge a security. And despite the very rich cash flows and the very profitable business that I have, trying to even get a loan, any form of loan from a major bank is borderline impossible. I even had a friend at a bank set me up with their commercial lending department to go over the deal I was looking to do. And they looked at it and said, we'd approve this in a heartbeat. Like this, the managers are all great on this. And then what they said, and then they're like, and they finished and they're like, but, and I'm like, but the deal is too small or my some metric doesn't qualify me for commercial banking. They're like,
it's a joke.
Yeah,
you wouldn't believe the type of businesses that we see week in, week out register on the platform here in Canada since we've launched, but also in Ireland, in Australia, in the UK where we're operating, that are strong businesses, turning over millions in many cases, low risk from most lenders' perspective, but just fit outside of the model for credit decision making for a lot of the a lot of traditional lenders. And I suppose there's some green shoots of hope popping up with digital lenders, fintech lenders, some non-bank lenders that are just using different models to make decisions. So I think a good example to look at is some of the e-commerce funders who don't really care so much what your balance sheet looks like. It's more about what's going on Shopify or Square or Stripe. And these alternatives.
But those it's easier. So that's another form of collateralization, right? Because they know that you've sold X amount of dollars. They know it's going to take 30 days to hit your bank account. So, hey, not a problem. Like we know the money's coming, right? So, but again, that's just a different form of security. It's the challenge is that when it actually get to a level, to get to the commercial banking level where they actually stop to truly understand how your business works and understand the risk, it's that bar just keeps on going up and up and up. And so many businesses are being left behind. And to the point, the further point was when they said they weren't going to be able to handle it. I'm like, so you're going to send me down to small business banking? And they're like, unfortunately. I'm like, that I'm not going to hit every checkbox and I'm done, right? And they're like, we're sorry, but we won't. Like, we could submit this, but they won't approve because it's below X whatever threshold. Yeah. I'm like, these guys were basically just super apologetic. They were just like, we know what's going to happen to you. We know you won't get this, and we're sorry. But if this was like, I'm not going to say add a zero to the deal because it wasn't that big of a difference. It wasn't that big of a delta. But like, if you were here and here and here, this thing would be approved like within a week, right?
And think about the volume of businesses that fall in that sort of annoying gap where they're not getting traditional lending and then choose not to take a look at the wider market or maybe aren't aware or don't have the time to explore that. And that's something that we see all the time. And it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not something that they're going to. It's not something that they're going to be able to. They're not going to change, right? Like there's not enough competition in this space, and at the end of the day, they keep on pushing more and more of the small business on the business lending and business services onto small business groups, which it's a checklist system. You hit these checklists or not, and the laughable options that they give you in response. And I think I've told this story before, but this was one of the funniest ones that I've ever had happen, where they're like, okay, so we can't lend money to you, but here's a solution. You're holding on to this many hundreds of thousands in your bank account, right? In anticipation of this deal. Yes. Okay. Well, you could put it with us in a GIC, and then we'll give you access to a line of credit in return. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So how big will the line of credit be? And they're like, they told me the amount. I'm like, that's the exact same amount of money I'm giving you. Right. And they're like, yes. I'm like, so let me get this straight. You want me to give you that money to earn 1%, which is taxable, to then, for the privilege of you give me a line of credit of the equivalent amount of money where I will pay you 7%.
Yeah.
What sucker takes this deal, and how can you even spit that out of your mouth as a possible option? Well, you establish a history with us and you show us you can pay your bills. I'm like, I'm done with you. Let's just close it. Just close every account. I'm so done with it. I could not believe they were actually trying to sell me on me systematically losing 6 points a year for no good reason. So anyway, I'll leave my grievances in the past. So yes, this is a real challenge. This is what we're trying to get at. This is a real challenge. And I will always say that, especially in Canada, banks, unless it's a small business loan backed by BDC, which is backed by the government, they're not going to take a risk, full stop. But there are alternatives out there. I've used crowdsourced funding in the past for deals, but the great thing is what you've done is you've basically compiled a platform for this. There's a couple of angles to this. So first off, talk to me about who you provide your platform to, or what distribution channels you provide your platform to.
Yeah, of course. So I mentioned earlier that we're trying to give a tool to create value for small businesses primarily. we're also trying to really make them get the most value out of their data. So, really empowering them to use their data to find all of the products that are out there that can actually, create value for their business. Obviously, open banking is a great conduit for this. And in other jurisdictions we're in the European Union and UK and in Australia, we're able to facilitate an easier exchange of financial data and customer accounting data in particular. Here in Canada, there is different facets of open banking going on. We lack a framework, obviously, but I think that's important to point out as well, because our platform really has grown out of open banking in many respects. But in terms of what products we bring into our marketplace and who we partner with in order to do that, in a Canadian context, I'll just deal with that first. We have a mixture of Schedule 1 banks, but we also have a range of other digital lenders, non-bank lenders, grant writing agencies, VCs, angel groups. And, as I said from the outside, we're really trying to ensure we have a marketplace to fit all the financing needs that a small or medium-sized business owner would have. So whether it's a line of credit, whether they're trying to purchase a piece of equipment for their business, whether they're trying to do a capital raise, we try to bring that all into the marketplace. Globally, we have over 1,000 products on the marketplace. And obviously each one of those is rooted in a partnership with a funder.
So you're trying to go to essentially more or less hubs of where business owners would be able to find them, right? And that makes sense because, the first thing, as you said, people just kind of give up, right? The rejection needs to give up because there's an education gap, right? We don't grow up. We all grow up learning what a mortgage is. We grow up learning what a credit card is. We don't grow up learning what vendor financing is. We don't grow up learning what receivables funding is. Like, we don't learn about any of that. So it's not surprising that a small business owner hasn't seen this stuff.
Exactly. And we have e-commerce businesses that have been killing it for a year or two, and all of a sudden they're running into supply chain issues. So their inventory cycle is extended somewhat. So they have cash flow challenges. They're sourcing inventory or stock in other jurisdictions. So maybe they need PO financing, trade financing. These are all products that e-commerce business owners probably not encountered before setting up the business. So having a platform like Swoop, where they can very easily just plug in their accounting software, answer a few questions, and all of a sudden have visibility over these products, hopefully, at the very least, saves them a huge amount of time and effort and opens their eyes to the range of products that are out there to help them overcome challenges that they're facing at that point in time.
Yeah, and that's an interesting differentiator there too, because, and it's from personal experience, the experience of dealing with these alternative lenders compared to the banks is like night and day. The banks, it's like, oh, here's everything we need from you. And then they come back 3 weeks later. It's like, oh, we also need this laundry list of things from you. And they come back 2 weeks later. We also need this laundry list of stuff from you. So it's just like this never ending succession of documentation and whatever else it might be, all to get to know in most cases. Versus, hey, we've put together this platform that will draw down the necessary information from your bank account, from your accounting software, from everywhere else, so that we can validate it's all right and get you an answer in the shortest amount of time possible. I mean, literally, it took me 3 months to get to know with a major Canadian bank. It took me 24 hours to get an offer tabled by an alternative lender. And the bank, I think, at one point basically said, well, okay, good luck to you. And I called them back 24 hours later, basically telling them what happened. They're just like, well, I don't know what you want me to say. And I just want you to acknowledge how effed up this is.
I know. Exactly. Yeah. And that's such a big driver of growth in the alternative financing market here. Like, if you look at the growth that Shopify Capital has, or Merchant Growth, or any of these lenders that are in the Canadian SME lending space, the growth they've had over the last number of years has been really, really high. And you have to look at the reasons why that is, because yes, they're prime plus a few more percent than the banks, but they're operating at a completely different speed. So if a business owner has an opportunity they need to capitalize on and move forward, then there are these products available where they can actually move ahead.
Well, that's the other thing too, as I've said, like, given especially as a busy business owner, given the delta in speed and getting this stuff done, like, I would pay the premium over top of that. Like, I would, is it a 1 to 2 point spread over top of it on a short-term loan over the course of a year or two or whatever else it is? Any day of the week, it's better than me spending 3 months going back and forth playing ping pong, to basically get more frustrated. So
it just depends on the scenario. Like, every business owner is going to encounter different scenarios, and if it makes sense for them to pay a few more over prime, then in many cases that makes a lot of sense and it still creates value for them. So it's just having visibility over all of those options, I think, is just a key issue for a lot of business owners. And as I said at the start, they're time poor people. They're trying to run their business.
Okay, so we talked about the distribution. We talked a little bit about the experience from the end user. We'll come back to that in a minute, but I want to talk about the aggregation piece, because here's the platform for people to offer this type of lending. So where are you finding these lenders? How are you going around finding them? What's the pitch to them? How receptive are they?
Business owners?
business? Well, no, the lenders.
The lenders. Yeah. So we find them pretty engaging. Obviously, when you're dealing with the larger banks, and this is also true in our experience in the UK and in Australia, when we onboard them onto the platform, and we have open integration with all of the biggest 9 banks in the UK, for example, it can be a slower process. You've got to work through with the compliance teams, the legal teams. They've got to make sure that they're happy to partner with you from a risk perspective. These are large, listed, regulated businesses with compliance out the door. So that can be a slow process. That said, they do view our platform as an important distribution channel for them to acquire new business banking clients. So that's kind of value proposition number 1. I think value proposition number 2 is also the data and insights that we might be able to serve up to them that they may not ordinarily be able to access. So we've done white label projects with some of the biggest banks in the UK, like NatWest and their subsidiaries, Royal Bank of Scotland. And that's allowed them to serve their clients with other products that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to, like grants or equity. But it's also allowed them to view their clients and learn more about their clients in a different lens and gather more insights and data. So in terms of onboarding lenders specifically, hasn't been enormously challenging because obviously you're supporting them greatly with customer acquisition and loan origination. But you're also, in some cases, depending on the nature of the partnership you have with them, providing them with something they don't already have and increasing the customer experience that they can offer to their business clients. So when we came to Canada, it wasn't an enormous challenge at all to build up our lender panel. And as I said, it can be a little bit slower when you're dealing with banks and the larger banks. But with a lot of the non-bank lenders, we were able to kind of onboard them and engage them in a pretty timely fashion before our launch. And that's still going on. We're all the time adding new partners every single week.
So, I mean, hey, most businesses are smart enough to recognize that another business looking to bring them business is a good thing. So not surprising there. Right. So you have this two-sided marketplace, you've got, distribution. Let's talk more so about now what the consumer experience is. So the business owner basically frustrated with their bank says, what else is there? Finds it through their distribution channel. What does their experience look like?
So we get this infuriated business owner rock up on the platform, or hopefully not so frustrated, but our customer user journey is quite short. You can register an account for free and it takes, I would say, 3 to 4 minutes all in. You provide some basic business information so that we can understand the kind of key points about your business that we need to learn about your financing requirement. The users can integrate their cloud accounting software. They can integrate their banking data. If they're an e-commerce business and they're on Square or Shopify or Stripe, they can integrate those data sources as well. And essentially, at the end of the user journey, we've collated enough information to match them with products from our marketplace. So if they've indicated that they have a working capital pressure or some cash flow pressures, then we'll find products that fit to help them with that scenario. Likewise, if they're looking to refinance an asset or expand or purchase stock, again, in the back end of our system, in our database, we're essentially matching that user with products based on one, the lending criteria. So if the bank tells us they only want to lend to businesses that are in these sectors, trading for this number of years, turning over this amount of revenue, then we'll only be dissecting our user base and matching to those products accordingly. So that's in essence what happens when a user registers on Swoop. When they complete the user journey, they'll essentially have a dashboard and they'll be able to see their matches, whether it's on the loan side, whether it's on the grants, whether it's on the equity. In some of our markets, we've built it out to include energies and utilities, savings, insurance savings opportunities, FX savings opportunities. So again, aside from just funding, we're also helping business owners to identify savings opportunities for their business and reduce some overheads based on data analysis as well. So we're looking at what they're spending on their bank statements on FX, for example, and we're proposing other products to help them make savings there.
So I contrast that versus the traditional, okay, give me all this information and I'll get back to you on this one thing you've asked for. What you've done there, besides the fact that you greased the wheels on getting to yes as fast as possible, it's this entire more so advisory piece that you've built over top of it as, hey, here's the stuff that would actually work for you. Tell me, and you know what, the reality is that's a hugely important thing because again, we'll go back to the education around this in that the reality is, does the business owner necessarily know the types of funding available to them?
Right.
I mean, a lot of startup business owners that I've known for years, like that early on, I was the one, educating them on the fact that, oh no, you have receivables coming in 30, 60 days and they're sold online. Well, yeah, you can capitalize on that.
Yeah.
And, so it's those are all things that they have to learn about. So the fact that you're serving that up helps basically meet that.
Yeah,
that function.
Exactly. And obviously those options are served up, those products are served up to the user. They interact with them, they learn what's required to apply. And once we're through the application, satisfied that they have the documentation in place to submit an application, they can instruct us to do so, and we'll package up the application to one or many lenders on their behalf, and ultimately save them the time of having to go through multiple application journeys. So that's kind of a key value add as well, because it's very time consuming, very cumbersome having to engage with multiple different lenders. And I suppose Swoop can kind of cut that out. So you're just doing one.
I will also commend you in that clearly this is not just about selling loans, because you can show some stewardship here on this website in that you have information up here about things like equity fund financing, crowdfunding, COVID-19 programs, grants available to people, certain tax credits. So clearly you're not just coming out here saying, hey, we're trying to capitalize on lending. We're also trying to bring you every option you possibly can for getting the money it is you need.
Yeah, that's a big part of our mission. I mean, when you hear conversations, like when I hear our sales team, for example, or our funding managers in Canada or in the UK or in Ireland, they're having conversations with the business owner. And while they might come to Swoop and say, hey, I need 100K because I need to purchase stock ahead of the holiday season or whatever the case might be. Also, we're having a conversation, okay, you could be eligible for these grants as well. Have you considered these? What are you spending on FX? Are you dealing in another jurisdiction? What sort of products can help you there? Trying to basically enhance and bolster the financial well-being of them in the best way we can. So, you mentioned COVID-19 programs. That's a big part of what we did during second half of 2020 and into 2021. We were able to distribute a massive amount of COVID-19 related funding and government guaranteed debt in the UK and Ireland in particular to a huge amount of businesses. And as a result, it was a massive period of growth for our business because we were acquiring all of these new users who were trying to figure out what type of government funding programs they could avail of. But obviously it enabled us to really kind of serve our users the best way we could at that moment.
Yeah. And again, I think if anything, it shows very easily demonstrates that you're on the side of the business owner here, right? And, I'm not so sure that these things would be discussed. I definitely know that some of this stuff would just not be discussed at the business banking level that the average business owner would actually get exposure to. So good on you. That's appreciated. So before we sign off, there's going to be 3 questions I ask everybody, just to end on a positive note. The first one I have for you is, if you had one wish for something to change in your company or the industry as a whole, what would it be?
I think I'm going to think in a Canadian context because that's what I'm living and breathing, obviously, here. I think access to data, publicly available data on companies, I think would just benefit so many different areas of this industry. When I compare it to, say, Companies House in the UK, where you're getting information on the business, the directors, the filings, the financials, that availability and kind of proliferation of data just has so many benefits, not just in transparency, but also kind of designing new products and meeting the needs of businesses in a kind of effective and fast way. That's something I think I would love to see here in Canada. And I'm sure I'm not alone there, but that's the first thing that really jumped to mind when you asked that question.
Yeah, corporate beneficial ownership registry has been a real sticking point and an issue for a while. And from many standpoints, one, dealing with our money laundering issues in this country, dealing with the real estate crisis. But also, like at the most base fundamental level, the fact that you look at, there's a lot of challenger banks or neobanks in the sector in Canada, but no one's offering business lending. And no one's offering business lending because the compliance burden is just too great, because unlike individuals where you can ping various databases to confirm identity, that just doesn't exist for corporations. There's like this fractured framework, right? So I know that that's something you guys and the various companies you work with have had to address, and it's a real challenge. But just having one database to ping to handle all that solves a lot of business growth elements, social issues. There's a lot impacted by it.
Yeah, and these databases exist. They're just siloed, and they just perhaps need the investment to develop APIs and to help them, exchange data and expose their data.
Yep, that's definitely the challenge. So open access to data has definitely been one of the more popular responses to that question. Second one, what's been the biggest challenge in getting Swoop to where it is today?
I hope this doesn't sound like too much of a cliche, but I think the talent piece and the people element is just in a continuum and an ongoing challenge as you're growing a company. And I'm sure everybody can relate to it in some way. But hiring people that are smarter than you and can do things that you can to think is the way to go, et cetera, which is a challenge, which takes a lot of time to invest in recruitment. Finding people that are completely bought in and you can see you're bought into what you're trying to do. And I think that's sometimes evident in the recruitment process. But if that's not there, I think you're set up for failure. So I think getting the right people in at the right time is always a challenge.
Yeah, that is by far the most popular response to that question. And, it's not a cliche. It's, we can call it a cliche because it's true, right? At the end of the day, it is, people are always the biggest challenge, and the right people are always finding the right people is always the biggest challenge. So no surprise. Last question for you is, what excites you the most about what it is you're working on and keeps you getting up in the morning to keep on fighting the good fight, especially in a highly regulated, skewed to the incumbents country like Canada?
I think the reaction, like we launched Swoop in November, and even in that short space of time, the reaction that we've got from the small business community, from brokers, from accountants, from people who are really involved with the business community, whether it's the chambers of commerce, some of the kind of professional agencies, the small business federations, the reaction's been immense. And whilst there are some offerings out there that compare products, etc., something as integrated as what we're doing does seem to be a little bit new. And I think there's big scope for impact. And I think that's something that's energizing and exciting over the next number of years, particularly as I'm not going to try to even guess when it's going to happen, but an open banking framework should come into Canada. I know 2023 was kind of chucked about as a date, but whenever that does come, I think there's so much opportunity for value for consumers and businesses, and I think we can be at the center of that.
I think the first thing I did was open the document, read the deadline, laugh, close it up. Give me a break. What a comical political thing to do to make it look like you're actually taking it serious. I cannot even get into that. Yeah. 2020, we're going to go from 0 to done in under 24 months. Not a chance. Just not a chance. Anyway, I could laugh about that all day and also cry about it, but it's a different story altogether. Anyway, Daire, very much appreciate the time taken today. Again, small business owners looking to basically get exposure, get into alternative lending because the normal system is not taking care of you. By all means, please take a look at Swoop Funding and any of the partners that bring them to you.
Thank you for having me on, Jason. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. So that was today's episode of Fintech Impact. I hope you enjoyed that. And as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and wherever it is that your podcasts. Till next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at jasonpereira.ca.